Welcome to Shattering Myths. I am Yada. This program is devoted to and for those of you who have either come to recognize or at least open to the idea that all human institutions, particularly political, religious, economic, and military institutions, are corrupt, they are counterproductive, and that they are things that God himself disparaged and asked us to separate ourselves from. Typically in this program, we begin with the news and we transition to a discussion of what's important to God, and if not that, at least a discussion of that exposes and condemns those things that are opposed to God's guidance, as is the case of questioning Paul. And this morning we have Kirk with us because on Fridays we conclude our program with a discussion with al-Rassooli out of Europe on the consequence of Islam. Kirk, I want to actually begin apart from Paul, but with Paul's legacy. Yesterday there was a shooting in an African, specifically called African Christian church. The fellow that did the killing sat there during what was first said was a prayer meeting and then a Bible study, and sat with the people for an hour. And then he pulled out a gun his father had recently purchased for him, and began shooting people, killed I think 9 people, 6 women, 3 men, and told the survivor that he was going to, one of the survivors, that I'm going to allow you to survive because I want you to explain what happened here. And as he was being asked, why are you shooting, he says, because you have raped our women and you have stolen our country. It's a lot to chew on there. What's your response?
I haven't kept up with the story. I know of it. I hadn't read any of the details on it, but I don't. I mean, killing a bunch.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine going into a meeting with a bunch of people and sitting around while they talk about their religion? In this case, it was a Bible study. And then pulling out a gun and murdering 9 people, 6 of which are women. I mean, imagine the depravity of the corruption, the indoctrination required to have a person do that.
I just can't imagine you sitting there for an hour while he's planning this. I mean, he knows he's doing it, and he's got a gun in his hand.
Yeah, I mean, here's a 21-year-old white guy that walks into this meeting. Mainly, I think he had the gun tucked behind his pants in the back, and that he had his shirt over it. So I don't think they knew that he had the gun. But
I mean, he knew he had a gun.
Yeah, I know, but just imagine the amount of depravity. And then to think that you're justified for doing so, and 6 of your victims are women, and that you shoot these women because you claim that you're raping our women, which would assume that he is assuming that white women in America are his, and that I guess women are more prone to rape them than are men.
Yeah, this is just too sick for words. I mean, it just. I don't know how to comment on it, just other than.
You know, in my view, killing is almost always wrong, that trying to solve a problem with a weapon is almost always counterproductive. But the thing that I'm most troubled by Islam, and in fact I'd be troubled by any act of terrorism, that this notion that individuals who had absolutely no involvement in whatever your beat is, that you would randomly seek them out to injure them and kill them, like the Boston Marathon bombing. It was because, America was had invaded Muslim lands and was killing and raping Muslim women was their excuse, the same excuse as this white supremacist used, the Muslim used, and therefore they were justified in their warped minds of killing people and injuring people who had absolutely nothing to do with any of that. And in this case, the same thing is true. It's kind of like America prosecuting World War II by firebombing civilian centers in Dresden and throughout Japan. Yeah. It's no different. It's perverse. It's this notion that you should make innocent people pay for with bodily injury and death.
Yeah.
For some beef that you have. It's really perverted. It shows a complete lack of exercising any kind of rational judgment. It's the thing that's killing America and the world, is the inability to exercise good judgment.
People just can't put two together. I mean, I don't get it.
And Obama wants to blame the gun and says, now we have to have another discussion on guns because the gun was used as the implement to kill these people. Now, you know what I think killed these people? I think it's the indoctrination that is part of the religion of America, socialist secular humanism, and the fact that as the central plank of socialist secular humanism, you can no longer be judgmental. You can no longer be discriminating. And you can no longer show an adversity to that which is wrong, that which is evil. And as a result, the young people that have been indoctrinated in this country with that false notion are incapable of exercising good judgment. That's what happened here.
I don't understand the attack on the weapon rather than the one who's wielding the weapon. I mean,
but I don't want to just look at the one that's wielding the weapon. I want to look at what is causing people to go into schools and do mass killings. What is causing people to think that they're justified in going into a group of 9 people and blasting them away? What is causing someone educated in this country to think they should plant a pressure cooker bomb to blow off people's legs and feet and murder them? Where have we lost our ability? Why have we lost our ability to exercise good judgment? What is the real cause of all of this?
Well, they obviously have no value in human life, so where does that come from? You have to indoctrinate somebody to have that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was born in the South, and there was a lot of horrible stuff going on back in the days when I was young. And but this was an indoctrination of people. My father was not a racist. In fact, that's probably why we wound up in Australia. He wanted us to grow up in a place that wasn't. So he just couldn't stand it. So and he was big enough to whoop everybody. He was the toughest guy in town, but it didn't mean anything if they shoot you in the back. But people were indoctrinated. I mean, they believed they were right in the stuff that they were doing.
This kid obviously thought that he was right at 21 years old to kill these people.
So that's indoctrination.
Well, yes, but I want to go back to my original premise. Okay, so a white supremacist, a racist, somebody that wants to judge people based upon the color of their skin as opposed to their character, that is going to demean individuals as opposed to doctrine, influenced this individual. But the only way that they were able to influence them, indoctrinate them with such stupidity, is for the person first to be rendered incapable of exercising good judgment regarding the indoctrination. How do you and I know that Paul was an absolute fraud, a complete and total liar, and that everything he wrote is counterproductive? How do you and I know that?
Because the facts dictate that. If you look at them,
right.
But we can think.
Right. We took the time to investigate all sides of the argument, considered the evidence, and exercised good judgment. We're resolutely rational and moral in our evaluation of the material and came to know for certain that Paul was a complete and utter fraud. We exercised good judgment.
Right.
Now, this young man was rendered incapable of doing that. Now, if he is rendered incapable of doing that, which is why the lie was so pervasive in his mindset, he's just simply a product of the educational failures, the indoctrinational nature of socialist secular humanism and what it has done to our education. You know, the highlight of my high school experience were rhetoric classes and public speaking, particularly debate, extemporaneous and impromptu speaking. I competed in statewide tournaments and those things, and my favorite classes by far were rhetoric. And rhetoric was really the art of analyzing arguments through logic and reason, and to dispelling false conceptions by recognition of the most common debate fallacies, rational fallacies. And nothing that I did in high school was more conducive to me being a useful, functioning, judgmental individual, moral individual in life than those classes. They don't get taught anymore.
No, it's well, I guess they still have some debate classes. I mean, they still have debaters, so they must.
Yeah, but it's not part of the curriculum.
No, oh no, not part of the curriculum.
And it's few and far between the schools that actually have forensics teams or forensic related competitions.
Yeah. Okay. No, but
are you aware of Are you aware of a school that isn't affected by political correctness? The same constraints that are put on politicians and the media, where there isn't an open and honest examination of the evidence. Only one side of things is told. It's always a jaundiced perspective, and people are not only discouraged from exercising good judgment, those who are judgmental are called haters, and they're publicly condemned.
Yeah, you couldn't get your degree anymore without that mindset.
No. In fact, thered be no way for you to get an advanced degree and to become a teacher without accepting that mindset.
Yeah. Certainly in California.
I'd say in the country.
Wow.
We'll be back.
Got it?
Kirk, yeah, go ahead, Kirk.
No, I was just going to say, when we were growing up, civility and morality were always something that was taught, and it was also reinforced by society, and just about everywhere you went, they were pretty much in agreement on what was right and what was wrong, as far as our relationships with one another. Yes. And if you could almost feel it creeping in the 60s and the 70s and all, when it was like, who says you're right? My morality is my morality, and yours is yours. So don't tell me what. Right.
This woman that was masquerading as an African American that was head of the NAACP in I believe it was Washington. She was on the news the following day with her 15 minutes of fame, and she said, well, it was my truth, and it was creative nonfiction. Creative nonfiction and my truth. Doesn't that just scream the problem we have today?
Oh yeah. So I don't.
You've got your truth and I've got my truth. Yeah, but there's truth.
Yeah.
You may have your opinion and I might have my opinion, but truth is truth.
Yeah.
And there's no such thing as creative nonfiction. There's creative fiction.
Yeah.
That's called a novel.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as it's called fiction. Yeah. If you're going to be creative, it's called fiction. Nothing wrong with fiction.
They have a word for that already.
Yeah, it's called fiction. There's no such thing as creative nonfiction. But the woman who was part of the Today Show panel, was listening and didn't never bother saying, wait a minute, there's no such thing as my truth and creative nonfiction. I mean, you were being paid to do a job? And for crying out loud, this is your perspective? This is your justification for misrepresenting yourself?
Let me ask you a question. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Scott.
I was going to say, my favorite part is it's my truth. Yeah, that's called delusion. That's what that's called.
Right,
delusion. It's either the truth or it's not.
Right.
Something you can think something's so true, but that's called that. And if it's not, that's called delusion.
Yeah. Why are there 600,000 returnees from Afghanistan and Iraq that have claimed post-traumatic stress disorder? 600,000. We didn't have 600,000 men that even served there. And yet there are 600,000 that have claimed that they're really screwed up in the mind. They're psychotic. They've been traumatized. They need drugs just to cope. They need counseling because they're traumatized. I mean, isn't this just another case where the indoctrination of reality, my truth according to politics, my truth according to the War Department and the military, is nothing but creative, well, let's not use nonfiction, creative fiction? Perceptions have become reality? And when they find that nonfiction and the fiction that they've been indoctrinated with don't match, they're really screwed up in the head.
Yeah, they don't know which way to turn.
Is it why 80 of them are taking their lives every day? 80 that we know of. That doesn't include suicide by vehicle, suicide by drug overdose, suicide by cop. Right. Yeah, suicide by alcohol. This by recklessness, which is a huge part of it.
Okay, let me ask you a question, and we'll give you a little test on logic here. And you were in business, and let's say you have someone you've been loaning money to, or pouring money into the droves, and they refuse to pay. And let's say that somebody ordered 10 widgets from me, and we charged them $10 a widget. They bought $100 worth of widget, and we send them an invoice for $100 worth of widgets due in 30 days. Yeah, sounds like my first business.
Yeah.
And they don't pay.
And they refuse to pay the $100 bill for widgets, and you call them and say, yeah, we received the bill. Yes, we received the widgets. Yeah, well, widgets were just fine. Yeah, no problem with the widgets. We just don't want to pay you.
Yeah. So what happens is you fight with these people back and forth, and maybe even they pay a little bit, and you pay them, send them some more widgets. But regardless, you've got this big debt, and now they refuse to pay. So if they do that, at some point, if you have no recourse, you just cut them loose, and you get rid of the freeloader, right?
So you don't send them any more widgets, and you turn them over to collections.
Okay, I'll ask you the question after the break, cause this, and then you can.
Okay, there's a rational question here. Okay, we'll deal with that after the break. Kirk and Scott, if I'm right, the real smoking gun isn't the gun.
No.
It isn't white supremacists. It isn't misguided young men. The real culprit here is a society that has been influenced to its degradation by a universal application of the edicts of socialist secular humanism. And throughout its educational system, throughout its media institutions, throughout its political institutions, such that its victims, which would be the preponderance of people living today, are now incapable of or unwilling to or ill-equipped to exercise good judgment. And therefore, they can't determine the difference between right and wrong, trustworthy or invalid, productive or counterproductive. Now, if that's the case, that's the most fundamental problem in our world today.
Yes. And it's absolutely true.
You're an educator.
Yeah. No, I took all these courses. I know. I keep up with educational stuff. Yeah.
I am blaming the education system in the West, as well as the education, the lack thereof, in the world of Islam, for imposing political correctness, where the exercise of good judgment, of being discriminating and discerning, for being in opposition to that which is wrong and immoral and destructive, has forever changed people's ability to process information and to act, therefore, appropriately.
Progressive education, which was experimentalism philosophy renamed, was designed to teach you to respond to situations not based on any truth, but just whatever works best for you.
Yeah, which is kind of outcome-based, if we were to use a term, that would be Machiavellianism.
Yes,
Machiavelli wrote the Prince to advise Italian royalty, Italian lords, how to keep, maintain, and deploy absolute authority over the Roman Catholic Church, so that they could remain in power. And what Machiavelli taught in The Prince, which is known as Machiavellism, was that the ends justify the means. And while he said it is always better to be loved and respected than it is to be feared, love and respect are far too hard to earn and far too undependable in terms of people's responses, and therefore absolute fear, terror, is a vastly superior means of controlling people. And so his idea, where the ends justify the means, is that you should be ruthless. You should make examples of people. You should be murderous. You should implement a reign of terror. You should do things that are so heinous that people dare not step outside the lines, that they will acquiesce, submit to your authority, because you make it far too scary to stand up and consider any other option. And he says if you do that over a long enough period of time, people will react. They'll no longer think. You won't have any opposition. That's Machiavellism,
right.
in its origins.
And what I'm saying is not that so much as the response to whatever comes your way, or you're taught to go with the flow as opposed to stand up and say this is true and this is not.
Yeah.
So you're teaching, you're enculturating or indoctrinating people to whatever comes your way is how you relate to it, not whether it's true or not.
Okay, and I think we're saying the same thing so long as I change one word. I need to change a word.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with teaching. You're not teaching people such that everything should be determined based upon its particular outcome and what is most beneficial to you. What you're doing is you're conditioning people. You're showing people through your behavior that the consequence of saying the right thing, of doing the right thing, of communicating the right thing, of acknowledging the right thing based upon a careful examination of the evidence and a rational evaluation of it, that those things will cause you discomfort. You'll be embarrassed. You'll be demeaned. You won't pass. You'll be given a poor grade. You'll be harassed. You will have labels applied to you, where if you don't think, if you simply accept the conditioning, and if you go along with everybody else, you won't be noticed. You'll go right along with the flow, and the experience for you will be pain-free. So I wouldn't call it teaching. I would call it conditioning.
Conditioning, that's good.
So, but that conditioning is based upon the Machiavellian philosophy. There's not a single teacher that would say, well, it's really good to condition people as opposed to teach them to be thoughtful. And so it's the Machiavellian concept of, since teachers universally have to accept socialist secular humanism and the edicts of political correctness, otherwise they can't teach. Otherwise they can't even conclude their education. they're thinking that, well, to condition the better society, the great society, these things are necessary. We need to make certain that truth is not a defense when saying something critical about another religion or political system, but that truth is not a defense. That those things just cannot be tolerated, and that the punishment has to be public humiliation.
Yeah, all things have to be equal in this world. You know, you have to accept everything. So. Yeah.
Accept everything that they're promoting. And if you, for example, if you say, listen, I don't care if somebody's homosexual, that's their choice. You know, whatever they want to do is fine with me. I don't care what they do. What I don't want is homosexuality being presented as normal, because it's not. It's the very definition of abnormal. It's 1% versus 99%. And it's not a healthy lifestyle. You know, it's between 5 and 10 year shorter longevity, mortality rates for practicing homosexuals. And that it should therefore also not be presented as something that is to be sought after, to be striven for, to be viewed as enlightened. It just should be accepted that, you know, there are people that are homosexual, and if they wish to do it, that is their business. They shouldn't be discriminated against for doing so. But I don't want it to be part of the education system to promote the false notion that it is normal and beneficial. And if I were to say that, I'd be humiliated. I'd be called a homophobe.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Can't even discuss the issue. Can't have a debate on homosexuality without somebody without a wholesale acceptance of the promotage as normal and being beneficial and enlightened and good. If you don't take that universal position, you can't even have a discussion without being humiliated.
Mm-hmm.
Damn the facts. You know, if I were to tell you that the problem with the judicial system in our country isn't a racial one, that there isn't a problem of a universal problem of whites wanting to kill blacks, but that in fact there is a serious problem the other way around, of blacks wanting to and engaging in the process of killing whites, and that African Americans are much more prone to commit violent crimes. Now, just to engage in that discussion, there are those who are liberal and socialist secular humanists that will already be calling me racist and all sorts of negative names, even though what I've just discussed is let's deal with the facts. Let's just discuss the facts as they are. But no, you can't do that today. So if you stop doing that, you're easily misled. How is it that 3 billion people today can be Christians when their religion is so obviously false when you consider the evidence?
Mm-hmm.
Because they won't tolerate anyone telling them the truth. You have to respect other people's religion. It's their right. No, I don't have to respect it. Why should I respect it?
It's like Muslim crime on Muslim crime. Nobody hates a Muslim worse than a Muslim. They kill each other more. They kill each other in such large numbers is unfathomable.
Yeah, I heard politicians immediately after this, and it might even have been the president, say, you know, the cause of this is hate, and we just can't tolerate this kind of hate. No, that wasn't the cause of the murder in the African American church. It wasn't because of hate. In fact, it may well be the lack of hate that precipitated this murder. We've gone to the point that we no longer hate those things which are counterproductive, those things which are destructive, those things which are immoral. If we hated those things which were conditioning and indoctrinating people so that they can't think, if we came to hate that which was despicable, then this person would never have grown up thinking that what he was doing was right.
Why was it so easy to destroy the Ku Klux Klan when it's exposed, and so hard when it comes to Islam or Christianity?
Yeah, it's interesting that the Ku Klux Klan in 1920 had 1 of every 10 adult males was part of it. 1 out of every 10 adult males was a member of the Klan. It was extraordinarily pervasive in our society. There were states where you could not win election unless you were nominated by the Klan. And so it was very pervasive around 1920 in America. Somewhere in the early 20s, some journalists got a hold of the internal documents of the Klan that stated clearly what they believed in and what they were trying to achieve. And they were published. And people were so horrified by the statements of the Klan and how different their documents were than their rhetoric, it became impossible for them to recruit or maintain membership. Welcome back to Shattering Myths. The reason, Kirk, that I wanted to go ahead and have this discussion, even though this would be the time we would normally have returned to our comparison between the 2 Shauls, the King Saul and the Saul that became Paul,
Right.
is that I think this is right at the root of the problem then, and now. Let me explain. Yahowah, on 3 occasions, told the Israelites why it was a horrible idea for them to choose a king to lead them. He told them all the consequence of religion, of government, of militarism, and of the economics that will be imposed on them. Between he and Samuel, he went over it with them 3 times. I may have mean 4 because, he said it, then he said it again, and then he said it, and he said it in Yahowah's presence. And all 4 times, the Israelites said, yeah, we don't care. We want it anyway.
That's about it, yeah.
Okay? So, it's like you can prove that God cannot die, so the basis of Christianity, that God died for your sins, is a crock. That no one recognized him on Bakudim, which means that he didn't rise bodily. That he was Torah observant, and if you're not Torah observant, then, well, I guess you're not following him.
No.
You can lay out any of this stuff, that he observed Pesach and Matzah and Bakudim and Shavuot, not Christmas and Easter, that he observed the Shabbat, not Sunday, that he never used the term Christian or anything even remotely close to it, that he never referred to himself as the Christ, that he never founded a church. You can prove all of this, that there was no person named Jesus, and show that all of this is counterproductive. Just as Yahowah said, he says, this stuff won't profit you at all. Don't do it. It's counterproductive. It's absolutely worthless. And today, just as then, you can present all of that. And you can present Yahowah's own testimony, and people can't process it, won't process it. Won't deal with it.
I'd say won't process it.
Yeah. So is the problem that existed back then with King Saul, and the problem that existed with the debate between Yahowah and the apostle Saul, the wannabe apostle Paul, isn't it just the same?
It's obvious it is, and lost for words of why, but it obviously is.
So it's a dysfunctional lasama, an unwillingness to use our conscience, our ability to discriminate between that which is true and that which is false. You've done, in the last 2 years, you've done an extraordinarily diligent examination of what God said, and to a lesser extent, a less diligent examination of what those in opposition to what God said have conveyed. As you have done that, have you found anything that has caused you to question the reliability and dependability, the truthfulness of Yahowah's testimony?
I've never been so sure of it because he reinforces it over. That's the whole story of Shaul versus Shaul. Everywhere you go,
Yes.
it tells the same story over and over. You've got you've got Abraham with Yishak, prototype to the Mount Moriah event, on and on and on and on. I mean, you cannot miss it. I mean, I don't know how many ways you could tell somebody.
Right.
In a classroom, the same thing, and they'd miss it, you know.
Right.
So,
yeah, he not only just tells us outright, but he gives us story after story after story that's woven into history that gives you a dress rehearsal for the main event.
Exactly. Over and over.
Right. Don't miss this. I'm giving you every possible detail and insight here so that if you didn't get what I was telling you just in simple words, you know, here's some human examples.
Yeah. What's not to get? I mean, you
what's not to get? And then you even have him, take this forward now to our time. He describes the Torahless one that Christians would call the Antichrist, the Torahless one.
Right.
And every trait is identical to the very person who he said would be Torahless, named Shaul, and he equates everything that we will see in the Torahless one known as the Antichrist with this historic character named Paul, the founder of the Christian religion. And yet,
that doesn't shake you at your boots?
It should. That Yahweh's every comment was, he's coming, he's going to mislead you. Don't become a victim. And yet they all have been. Common denominator here.